Okay, hey there. All right, so in this episode, we'll actually create the service. We're actually going to make the logic happen. Okay, I've been talking about logic for so long, and finally we can do it. We are ready in terms of configurations and so on and so forth. Okay, so in our service package, I'm just going to add the first interface is going to be teacher interface. Let's call it teacher service. Alrighty. And over here, we're going to indicate which methods are we going to use in our implementation to make it mandatory and make it very organized. That's where we have interfaces. They're like contracts. Okay, so here, let's say the first thing is save. A method that returns a teacher, and it's called, believe it or not, add teacher. Because the first thing that we want to do is we want to add a teacher, right? Save a teacher in a database. That's why we have a database to begin with. So this is our first method that we're going to use. It returns a teacher. Once we'll save it, we'll actually have the entity and we'll be able to return it because maybe we'll need all the teacher fields and the data about this particular teacher in the front. So it's always a good practice. So once you save an entity or a record in a database, to actually return the particular entity you saved. Okay, and we pass in a teacher that we want to save, teacher entity and teacher object. Well, also we want to save a student as well, and we are passing a student. The logic in our project is that the teacher is the most important entity. Okay, the teacher is like the administrator. Okay, he has all the authorities. He can do whatever. Okay, he can add teachers, which is probably not a good practice. We should probably have a separate admin for that purpose. But in our case, in our simple application, the teacher can add a teacher, which is kind of weird, I know, but hey, it is what it is in our case. And a teacher can add, obviously, students. Okay, you can delete students and so on and so forth. So for now, we'll have only these two methods over here. Okay, we'll add more methods. Now in our service, I want to add another package, and that's where we're going to have implementation. I'll call it impl, like that. And inside impl, I will add a Java class, and we'll call it teacher service impl. Service impl. Okay, so here we're going to implement this teacher service. It's already giving me the red squiggly line, and I can already import all the methods to override. Okay, so first of all, we have the add teacher, and we're lacking here something. Remember, we spoke about dependency injections. Okay, dependency injection, it's a main, like one of the most important things in Spring. It's one of the most important things in any programming language, but here we actually call it by the name of dependency injection. So what we're going to inject into this bean, and this is a bean right here. Okay, so something that I didn't do yet, which is incredibly important so that Spring will know what the hell I'm talking about here. We need to add a little thing here. It's called service, right? It's a service class, so we need to add a service. Now Spring knows that this is a component. This is a bean that it can work with. But this bean is lacking something, right? We want to work with a teacher. We want to work with a student here as well. So we need to basically inject a certain dependency, a certain other capability so that this class or this entity or object, it can use it to have more capabilities in terms of functionality, right? Okay, I think I spoke enough. Anyways, what we need to add here is basically the repository, right? We're lacking the repository. If you want to add things to the database, we need to add this repository into our teacher service. So the repository, I'll call it teacher repository. And I will also create another one, student repository. Okay, now we have both. And the only thing that we're lacking, yes, we added the service annotation here, but we're lacking this auto wire that I spoke about earlier in one of the first videos. The only thing that we'll add is this auto-wired annotation, which basically tells Spring that if you want to use this bean right here, okay, this entity, you will need to have these injected, okay, because the teacher service implementation needs the teacher repository and the student repository in its methods and in general in its function as part of its functionality. Without it, it's not gonna fly. So you need to add this auto wired, which basically does the injection. Pretty simple, right? That's pretty much what injection is. Now we can do it also in a constructor form, annotated with auto wired. I'm not even sure. I think it's possible not to even annotate it when you're using constructor. Maybe it's automatic, but let's go with that one for now. Okay, you can check it. It's probably not a big deal. Now, okay, so we want to add the teacher. All we have to do is just use the teacher repository. Remember, we need the repository to save the teacher. And all we'll do is just save the teacher. Pretty darn simple, right? Now, it gives me this red squiggly line here, and it's just because I didn't really return anything. So I can either return this way, because save is basically returning the type of entity that it saves. Okay, but we can also do it this way. It's probably shorter, but we can also do it this way and call it save teacher and just return save teacher. Okay, that can also be the case. Now in the student, guess what? It's going to be very similar. In this case, we need the student repository, because if we'll do the same with the teacher repository, it's not going to work. The teacher repository only works with the teacher entity. So here the same thing, we just save a student. Okay, in this case, let's make it short. Return student. All right, so it's pretty much ready as far as I can tell. I mean, we have two repositories that we injected here. Then we save the teacher and save a student. It's pretty basic right now. We're not filtering or querying the database for something too complex. All we do is we just add the entities. I mean, we do need to add entities to begin with. Okay. Now, once you create your own project, make sure you basically develop a plan, like a blueprint. Okay. That's why we have something like an interface. So you write down all the methods that you want to begin with. Okay. You basically engineer your project before you actually start writing the code. Writing the code is always the easy part. All you want to do first is just to do all the organizing. So in something like a teacher service, it would probably be recommended to start typing down all the methods with all the functionality, like deleting, adding, saving, whatever you can imagine, okay? Or maybe doing some calculations or some complex logic, whatever is necessary, but always organize everything. Now here we have a very basic project, but I mean, I want you to have good practice when you're starting to develop whatever you develop. Okay, awesome, great. So we have our service. Our service is ready, actually. Okay, we don't need another service for the student, because remember, the teacher is the one who's calling all the shots and basically can add entities, delete, and so on and so forth. It can't delete now because we don't have this option, but now we can add whatever entities that we need. Now that's going to be it for this episode. In the next one, we're actually going to write down the controller finally. So the client will be able to also communicate with our backend application and adding teachers, adding students, etc. Okay, this is it for this one. Have a good day, and like the video and subscribe if you like to see more of that good stuff, more of that auto-wired stuff.